Chike Okafor sat in his Range Rover across the street, watching through dark sunglasses as his three best friends threw his belongings out of the apartment window. His designer clothes landed in the mud, his shoes scattered like broken dreams on the wet Lagos pavement. They didn't know he was watching. They didn't know this was all a test. And they definitely didn't know that the broke man they just betrayed was worth over 500 million naira. Asterisk. If you are just tuning in to this channel, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up and tell us where you are watching. Chike Okafor was the kind of friend everyone wanted to have. At 28, he owned 2 restaurants in Victoria Island, 3 cars, and an apartment in Lekki that made people stop and stare. His friends called him Oga Chike, with genuine respect and love, or so he thought. Every weekend, his place buzzed with laughter, music, and the smell of expensive whiskey. Emeka would arrive with his girlfriend. Ibrahim would bring his latest business ideas, and Siga would entertain everyone with his jokes. For 3 years, this had been their routine. Chike paid for everything, the drinks, the food, even their Uber rides home when they drank too much. He didn't mind. These were his brothers, his childhood friends from their days hustling in Mushin. They had sworn to always support each other, no matter what. When Emeka needed money for his mother's surgery, Chike had given him 200,000 naira without asking questions. When Ibrahim's business failed, Chike helped him start again. When Segan lost his job, Chike made sure he never went hungry. This was what friendship meant. Lifting each other up, sharing both good and bad times. But lately, something had been bothering Chike. He noticed how his friends' eyes lit up when he brought out his credit card, how they always had excuses when it was time for anyone else to pay. He watched how they bragged about their rich friend Chike to strangers, as if he was some kind of trophy. A small voice in his head whispered a question he didn't want to answer. Would they still be my friends if I had nothing? The doubt started small, like a tiny crack in a wall that grows bigger every day. Chike began to notice things he had ignored before. When they went out, his friends would order the most expensive items on the menu, knowing he would pay. They never said thank you anymore. It was as if his generosity had become their right. At parties, they would introduce him as Chike, the rich guy, instead of just our friend Chike. One evening, while they were drinking beer on his balcony overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, Chike decided to test the waters. Guys, what if I lost all my money tomorrow? Will we still be friends like this? He asked, trying to sound casual. The silence that followed was loud enough to hear a pin drop. Emeka laughed first, slapping Chike's back. Guy, why you day think such thing? You too smart to go broke. Ibrahim nodded quickly. Besides, we don't friendship you because of money. We've been friends since secondary school at BI. But Segan's answer chilled Chike's heart. Honestly, bro, if you broke tomorrow, how we go day hang out like this? You know say this kind lifestyle costs money. We know fit day party with Fanta and biscuit. The other two quickly tried to cover up Segan's honesty with nervous laughter, but the damage was done. That night, after his friends left, Chike sat alone in his big apartment and felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The question that had been whispered now screamed in his mind. Are they my friends, or are they friends with my money? Chike spent the next few days thinking deeply about his friendships. He remembered how they used to be when they were all struggling. Back then, they would pool their money together to buy one bottle of soft drink and share it. They would trek long distances instead of taking bus because they had no money. But they were happy, genuinely happy in each other's company. When did that change? When did his success become the foundation of their friendship? He decided to find out the truth, but he needed a plan. Simply asking them wouldn't work. People rarely tell the truth about such sensitive matters. He needed to create a situation where their true character would show. This wasn't about money. It was about discovering who truly cared about him as a person. If they failed this test, at least he would know where he stood. If they passed, he would apologize and love them even more for their loyalty. The plan was simple but required careful execution. He would pretend to be broke, not just low on cash, but completely finished. He would move out of his expensive apartment into a small room, sell his cars, or pretend to, and close his restaurants temporarily. He would need their help, their support, their friendship when he had nothing to offer in return. This was the ultimate test of friendship. His lawyer, Mr. Adebayo, thought he was crazy when Chike explained the plan. You want to fake being poor to test your friends? Young man, some tests are better left untaken. But Chike's mind was made up. On a rainy Thursday morning, Chike called his friends with panic in his voice. Guys, I need to see you urgently. Something terrible has happened. Within an hour, all three were at his apartment, looking concerned. Chike had prepared well for this moment. He had scattered fake legal documents on his table, put empty bottles around to suggest he had been drinking heavily, and made sure he looked distressed. My business partners have cheated me, he began, his voice shaking with practiced emotion. They forged documents and took everything. The restaurants, the cars, even this apartment. Everything is gone. The bank is coming to seize properties tomorrow. He showed them the fake legal papers, watching their faces carefully. At first, they looked shocked and sympathetic. Emeka put his arm around Chike's shoulder. Don't worry, bro. We'll figure something out. But as the reality of what Chike was saying sank in, their expressions began to change. Ibrahim was the first to ask a question Chike knew was coming. So, what are you going to do? Where will you stay? Chike looked at each of them with hopeful eyes. I was hoping maybe I could stay with one of you guys for a while, just until I get back on my feet. The silence that followed was different from the comfortable silences they used to share. This silence was thick with discomfort and unspoken thoughts. Emeka was the first to respond, but his enthusiasm had already faded. Chike, say my place small, and my girlfriend Day, there most of the time. She no go like if you come stay. His voice carried an apologetic tone, but his eyes were already looking for escape routes. Ibrahim quickly joined in. My landlord gets strict rules about visitors. Plus, my roommate. The excuses came flowing like water from a broken pipe. Segan, who had always been the most honest among them, remained quiet. Chike could see him thinking, calculating something in his head. Finally, Segan spoke. Guy, this thing's serious, but make we think him well. You sure say fit talk to your family? Your uncle way get money. Chike felt his heart sink a little deeper. Even in his fake crisis, they were trying to pass him to someone else, someone who could help him better than they could. I thought you guys were my family, Chike said softly, and for a moment his pain was real. The three friends looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats like children caught stealing. They stayed for another hour, offering words of encouragement that felt empty and promises of help that sounded hollow. As they prepared to leave, each of them promised to think of something and get back to him soon. But Chike could see it in their eyes. They were already distancing themselves from his problems. 2 days later, Segan came back to the apartment alone. Chike thought maybe he had come to offer genuine help, to show that their friendship was stronger than money. But Segan had something else in mind entirely. He looked around the apartment with new eyes, the eyes of someone evaluating property rather than visiting a friend. Guy, I've been thinking about your situation, Segan began, his voice taking on a businesslike tone that Chike had never heard before. Since you lose this place anyway, why sell some of these your things first? That your sound system go cost at least 150,000 naira. Your TV SEF, now latest model. Instead make bank seize everything. Make we sell him quick. Chike stared at his friend in disbelief. Was Segan really suggesting he sell his possessions, or was he angling to buy them cheaply for himself? Actually, Segan continued, warming up to his idea, I fit help you sell them. In fact, I know people way go buy 'em cash down. We fit start with small things, your clothes, your shoes. I get one my guy way day by designer things. The more Segan talked, the clearer his real intentions became. He wasn't there to help Chike. He was there to benefit from Chike's misfortune. He wanted to buy Chike's expensive items at throwaway prices, probably to resell them later at full value. By the end of the week, all three friends had shown their true colors in different ways. Ibrahim came with a business proposal. He wanted Chike to sign over the rights to his restaurant recipes in exchange for taking care of the legal matters. He claimed he had connections who could help, but only if Chike gave him something valuable in return. The recipes that had made Chike's restaurant successful were worth millions, and Ibrahim wanted them for almost nothing. Emeka's approach was more subtle, but equally selfish. He offered to let Chike stay in his boys' quarters, a tiny room behind his house that was meant for house helps. "It's not much, but at least you'll have somewhere to stay," he said, making it sound like a generous offer. But then came conditions. Chike would have to pay rent, buy his own food, and help with house chores. Essentially, Emeka was offering to let his best friend become his paying tenant and part-time house help. Meanwhile, their behavior when they were together had changed completely. They no longer included Chike in their weekend plans. When they did visit, they came empty-handed, no drinks, no food, nothing. They would sit in his apartment and complain about their own problems, completely ignoring the fact that Chike was supposedly facing the biggest crisis of his life. It was as if his poverty had made him invisible, irrelevant to their lives. The breaking point came on a Sunday evening. Chike had moved his most valuable possessions to a storage facility, keeping only basic items in the apartment to maintain his act. He had told his friends that the bank would seize the apartment on Monday morning, and he desperately needed somewhere to spend the night. This was his final test. Would any of them open their doors to him in his hour of greatest need? Emeka's phone went straight to voicemail when Chike called. Ibrahim answered but said he was traveling and wouldn't be back for a week. Segan answered on the third ring, and Chike could hear music and laughter in the background. "Guy, I day party now, oh. This thing you day talk, we go discuss him tomorrow, ABI?" When Chike explained that tomorrow would be too late, that he needed help tonight, Segan's response was brutal in its honesty. "Chike, no vex, but I know fit mess up my Sunday because of your walla. You not grown man, you suppose know how to handle your problem." That night, Chike sat in his empty apartment. Empty not because the bank had seized it, but because his heart felt completely hollow. These were the people he had called his best friends, his brothers. These were the people he had shared his success with, supported through their troubles, celebrated with during good times. Now, when they thought he had nothing to offer them, they had abandoned him completely. The test was over, and they had failed spectacularly. On Monday morning, Chike decided to play out his act to the very end. He called his friends one last time, telling them that the bank officials were coming to seal the apartment, and he had nowhere to go with his remaining belongings. He asked if he could store just a few important items at their places, family photos, important documents, things that had sentimental value. Surely, even if they couldn't accommodate him, they would help him preserve his precious memories? Emeka's response was sharp and final. "Guy, my house no be warehouse. I no get space for your things." Ibrahim was even more callous. "Why you no rent storage space?" "Oh, I forget, you no get money again." But it was Segan who delivered the cruelest blow. "Honestly, Chike, since you done broke like this, I think say not better thing. You been too proud when you get money. Now you go learn how to humble yourself." By afternoon, when Chike called to tell them he was leaving the apartment and didn't know where he would sleep that night, none of them answered their phones. The silence was deafening. These were people who used to call him multiple times a day when they wanted something. Now, when he needed them most, they had made themselves unreachable. The friends who had once competed to sit closest to him at parties were now competing to stay farthest away from his problems. Chike moved his act to the next level. He rented a small, run-down room in Mushin, the same area where they had all grown up together. He bought some old clothes from Balogun Market and transformed himself into the image of a man who had truly lost everything. Then he went to find his friends, to see how they would treat him when they saw him in this condition. He found them at their usual hangout spot, a beer parlor in Acadia where they had been going since their university days. But when he walked in wearing his worn clothes and carrying a small bag containing all his worldly possessions, their reaction shocked him even more than their earlier betrayals. They didn't just ignore him. They were actively embarrassed by his presence. "Guy, what you dey do here?" Segan asked in a harsh whisper, looking around to see if anyone had noticed them together. "You know say we dey here with some important people. You know fit, just dey show face like this." Ibrahim was even more direct. "Chike, no offense, but the way you look now, it go affect our reputation if people see us with you." Emeka simply turned his back and continued his conversation with the girl, pretending he didn't know Chike at all. The final humiliation came when Chike asked if he could borrow 500 naira for food, less money than they used to spend on chewing gum when he was buying their drinks. The three friends looked at each other uncomfortably, and then Segan spoke for all of them. "Guy, we no get cash now. Time's hard for everybody." This from the same people who had once ordered 20,000 naira worth of drinks in one night, knowing Chike would pay. But the real shock came when Chike overheard them talking about him after they thought he had left. He had stepped outside but remained close enough to hear their conversation through the open window. "Thank God we no too close to him again," Ibrahim was saying. "Imagine if we been day help am. People go think say we broke too." Emeka agreed. "Nah, why I day tellin' to make we careful about the kind friends we keep. Poor people day drag successful people down." Segan's comment was the most hurtful. The guy thinks say because we grow up together, we suppose they suffer with am. But friendship, nah different thing from charity. If you no get anything to bring to the table, you no fit sit for the table. They laughed at this, as if Chike's downfall was some kind of joke. These were the same people who had eaten at his table for years, who had benefited from his success, who had called him brother. Standing in the darkness outside the beer parlor, listening to his former friends laugh about his misfortune, Chike made a decision that would change everything. He pulled out his phone and called his lawyer, Mr. Adebayo. "The test is over," he said quietly. "They failed completely. Now I want to show them exactly what they've lost." Mr. Adebayo had been waiting for this call. Over the past weeks, he had been preparing for this moment, setting up the final phase of Chike's plan. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" the lawyer asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Your relationship with these people will be over forever." Chike looked back at the beer parlor, where his former friends were still celebrating their freedom from his problems. "They ended the relationship already," Chike replied. "They showed me that our friendship was just a business transaction. I was paying for their company without realizing it. Now it's time to close the account." He had given them every opportunity to show genuine friendship. He had made himself vulnerable, asked for basic human kindness, offered them the chance to be the friends they claimed to be. Instead, they had revealed themselves to be shallow, selfish people who valued money more than human relationships. The next morning, Chike began the most satisfying phase of his plan. He returned to his real life, his successful businesses, his expensive cars, his luxurious apartment. But first, he had some theater perform. He went to the small room in Mushin where he had been pretending to live and packed up his costume of poverty. Then he drove his Range Rover to the storage facility and retrieved all his valuable possessions. By evening, news had spread through their mutual social circle like wildfire. Someone had seen Chike at his restaurant, dressed in expensive clothes and clearly in charge of a thriving business. Someone else had spotted him driving his Range Rover through Victoria Island. The phone calls from his former friends started almost immediately, but Chike let them all go to voicemail. Emeka was the first to leave a message, his voice confused and slightly panicked. "Guy, I hear say you day your restaurant today. I no understand when day happen. Call me back a beg. Ibrahim's message was more direct. Chike, people day tell me different story about you. Make we meet and talk. But it was Segan's message that revealed how quickly their concern had turned to calculation. Brothers, if you don't get your money back, we need to celebrate. I know one new spot where they hot for 6. Unable to reach Chike by phone, the 3 friends decided to confront him directly. They showed up at his apartment unannounced, their faces showing a mixture of confusion, anger, and hope. When Chike opened the door, they saw him in his normal state, well-dressed, confident, clearly not the broken man they had abandoned just days earlier. What kind of game be this? Segan demanded, pushing his way into the apartment. You been day lie to us all this time? The other 2 followed, looking around at the luxurious surroundings they had enjoyed so many times before. Nothing had changed. The expensive furniture was still there, the big screen TV, the sound system that Segan had wanted to buy at a cheap price. It was as if the crisis had never happened. Chike closed the door calmly and faced them. I wasn't playing a game, he said quietly. I was taking a test. And all 3 of you failed spectacularly. The silence that followed was heavy with realization. They began to understand what had happened, what they had walked into, what they had revealed about themselves. The comfortable lies they told themselves about their friendship were crumbling before their eyes. You see, Chike continued, walking his window and looking out the Lagos skyline. I started wondering whether you guys were my friends or just friends with my money. So I decided to find out. I pretended to lose everything to see how you would treat me when I had nothing to offer you. He turned back to face them, his eyes calm but cold. When I needed a place to stay, you all had excuses. When I needed help selling my things, Segan wanted to cheat me. When I needed basic human kindness, you were embarrassed to be seen with me. When I asked for 500 naira for food, you claimed to be broke, the same people who used to order expensive drinks on my bill every weekend. The 3 friends tried to interrupt, to offer explanations and justifications, but Chike held up his hand. I'm not finished. The worst part wasn't that you couldn't help me. I understand that everyone has limitations. The worst part was how you talked about me when you thought I couldn't hear. You said friendship is different from charity, that poor people drag successful people down, that you were glad to be free of me. Emeka was the first to try to defend himself, his words tumbling over each other in his haste to explain. Guy, you don't understand. That time, things been tight for me too. My girlfriend been giving me pressure, my rent been due. I know been get space for extra person for house. His voice carried a pleading tone that Chike had never heard before. Ibrahim joined in, his usual confidence replaced by desperation. Chike, you know say not joke we been day make that day for beer parlor. We no mean am seriously. You know how we day talk when we done drink small. His excuses sounded hollow even to his own ears. He had been completely sober when he made those cruel comments about friendship and charity. But it was Segan who surprised everyone with his response. Instead of making excuses, he sat down heavily in one of Chike's expensive chairs and said, You're right, we treat you badly, but you no suppose do this kind test without telling us. His voice carried anger instead of remorse. You make us look like fools. You think say you better than us because you get money to waste on games like this. Chike looked at each of them carefully, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. Segan, you still don't get it. This wasn't about making you look like fools. This was about finding out who you really are, and you've shown me exactly that. He walked to his bar and poured himself a glass of water, his movements calm and deliberate. For 3 years, I thought we were friends. I paid for everything, supported your dreams, helped you through tough times. But I realize now that I wasn't your friend. I was your ATM. The moment the money stopped flowing, you couldn't get away from me fast enough. His voice remained steady, but there was pain underneath the calm exterior. Real friends don't abandon each other when times get hard. Real friends don't talk about each other the way you talked about me. Real friends don't see someone's downfall as an opportunity to benefit themselves. He set down his glass and faced him directly. You've shown me that our entire friendship was built on my ability to pay for your entertainment. Now that I know the truth, there's no going back. Over the next few days, the three former friends tried everything they could think of to get back into Chike's good graces. They sent text messages full of apologies and explanations. They called his office, trying to reach him through his secretary. They even went to his restaurant during business hours, hoping to catch him in a public place where he would have to be polite. Emeka brought his girlfriend to plead his case, claiming that his behavior had been influenced by her pressure and his own financial stress. Ibrahim wrote a long letter explaining his family problems and how they had affected his judgment. He promised to be a better friend if given another chance. Segan took a different approach. He tried to make Chike feel guilty for testing them in the first place. "Brothers, what you do no fair," Segan said when he finally cornered Chike at the restaurant. "You set trap for us like we be rats. Friends no suppose they test each other like this. If you been just talk to us, tell us say you dey observe our behavior. Maybe we for try harder." But Chike's response was swift and final. "If you have to try to be a good friend, then you're not really a friend at all." As weeks passed, Chike began to build new relationships based on honesty and mutual respect. He met people who valued him for his character, not his bank account. He found friends who offered to pay their own way when they went out together, who checked on him when he was quiet, who celebrated his successes without jealousy, and supported him through challenges without conditions. One evening, while having dinner with his new friend Kemi, a teacher who had no idea how wealthy he was, Chike realized something important. He had been so focused on what he had lost that he had forgotten what he had gained. The test had been painful, but it had freed him from relationships that were draining his spirit and his resources. "You know," Kemi said, unaware of his thoughts, "I've noticed that some people collect friends like trophies. They want to be around successful people just to feel important themselves. But real friendship is about who stays when the party's over." Her words hit Chike with the force of truth. She had described exactly what he had experienced, exactly what he had learned. 6 months later, Chike ran into his former friends at a business event. They were together, still hanging out as a group, but something had changed. They looked older, more tired, less confident. When they saw him, their faces showed a mixture of shame, regret, and longing. They approached him cautiously, like children who had been caught misbehaving. "Chike," Emeka said softly, "we've been thinking about what happened. We know we messed up badly. We lost a good friend because we were selfish and shallow." Ibrahim nodded in agreement. "We realize now that what we had was special. We took it for granted, and now we're paying the price." But it was Segan who spoke the words that meant the most. "We learned something about ourselves that we didn't want to know. We found out that we weren't the good people we thought we were. We were just people who acted good when it was easy and profitable." His honesty was raw and painful, but it was real. Chike looked at them for a long moment, remembering the years they had shared, the laughter and betrayal, the lessons learned on both sides. "I forgive you," he said finally, "because holding on to anger only hurts me. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. You showed me who you really are when you thought I had nothing. I can't unsee that truth." He shook hands with each of them and walked away, not angry anymore, but free. The test had cost him 3 friendships, but it had given him something more valuable: the knowledge of his own worth and the wisdom to choose better friends in the future. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach us the most about life. As he drove home that night, Chike smiled to himself. He had learned that true wealth isn't measured in naira and kobo, but in the quality of relationships we build. He had discovered that it's better to have one real friend than 100 fake ones. And most importantly, he had learned that sometimes losing the wrong people is the first step to finding the right ones. The test was over, and although his former friends had failed, Chike had passed the most important test of all, the test of knowing his own worth.